To speak? Yeah. Okay. Let me first say that I'm very pleased to be here and to have received this invitation. It's been many years since I've been in the former Yugoslavia, and I've been to Zagreb several times during the 70s and 80s when I would go to the annual conference in Cavtat of socialism in the world, and then after that would visit parts of the old Yugoslavia in order to study self-management, which interested me very much. For those who were here last night to hear Slavo, you'll see a great contrast in the presentation. Not because I'm speaking a Slovenian version of sober Croatian, but because I'm speaking only in English. There's also a complete lack of spontaneity because I have a written text, and I will follow that text closely, in part not to create an even greater job for the translators, who have a very difficult job always. So I will try to do that with little improvisation, but with a few interventions based on, related to some of the presentations we've heard. The talk that I'm giving is based on the new book that I've done called The Socialist Alternative, Real Human Development. This book will be out in English in July, and there are plans to translate it into Croatian. I'm not certain how soon that would happen. And let me just say that from the comments that have been made by Streko and others, I may disappoint people here because I'm not going to be focusing on concrete developments in Venezuela. In my presentation, my interest is more in attempting to theorize what is happening in Venezuela and the new model that is emerging there. And in this context, we'll have an opportunity in the discussion period to talk about some of the concrete questions and how the theoretical model that I'm setting out is being realized in Venezuela. And if that doesn't come up we don't have time in the discussion period to deal with that, there'll be the round table tomorrow night where I'm sure that will come up. And if it doesn't come up sufficiently in that, we can take a leaf from the book of the students and seize the room and have our own session. So let me begin. And let me say that the title of my talk is called Reinventing Socialism and Recovering Marx. And I think the first question we deal with is, what is socialism? For many people who are schooled in the text of the 20th century, the following three propositions hold. One, socialism is the first stage after capitalism and is succeeded by the higher stage, communism. Two, development of the productive forces is the condition for communism. Three, the principle of distribution appropriate to socialism and the development of productive forces is in accordance with one's contribution. In short, socialism in this received doctrine is the stage in which you develop productive forces and thereby prepare the way for the higher stage. Further, an important characteristic of the socialist stage is the place of material incentive. Sorry? Am I going too quickly or no? That characteristic is the application of what is called the socialist principle from each according to his ability to each according to his work. To a significant extent, these propositions can be traced back to Lenin. It's well known, too, that these propositions were accepted as the theoretical foundations for attempts as disparate as the Soviet model and the Yugoslav self-management model to build socialism in the 20th century. They had that in common. And those were attempts, we know, that ended up in what Marx called, in the Communist Manifesto, a miserable fit of the blues. The question I pose then is whether we don't have to reject these propositions, not only based on the face of their historical experiments, but also as a distortion of Marx. So what I'm going to be talking about here is talking about what I call the three rejects, the three propositions we must reject. I'll talk also about the concept of socialism for the 21st century, and also about, in this context, the Yugoslav self-management model. We have to reinvent socialism. That was the statement which Hugo Chavez electrified activists with in his closing speech at the World Social Forum in Porto Alegre, Brazil in 2005. And he said, it can't be the kind of socialism that we saw in the Soviet Union, but it will emerge as we develop new systems that are built on cooperation, not competition. And he said, if we're ever going to end the poverty of the world, of the majority of the world, capitalism must be transcended. But, quote, we cannot resort to state capitalism, which would be the same perversion of the Soviet Union. We must reclaim socialism as a thesis, a project, and a path, but a new type of socialism, a humanist one, which puts humans and not machines or the state ahead of everything, end of quote. In short, neither expansion of the means of production nor direction by the state should define the new socialist society. Rather, what Chavez is saying is human beings must be at its center. And this is the specter that is haunting 21st century capitalism in the 21st century, the specter of socialism for the 21st century. And at its core is the key link, a term from Lenin, the key link of human development and practice. And this concept of human development and practice can be found very clearly in the Bolivarian Constitution of Venezuela, which was established in 1999. In that Constitution's explicit recognition in Article 299 that the goal of a human society must be that of ensuring overall human development, in the Declaration of Article 20 that the focus that everyone has the right to the free development of his or her own personality, and the focus of Article 102 upon developing the creative potential of every human being and the full exercise of his or her personality in a democratic society, this theme of human development pervades the Constitution. But there's more. This Constitution also focuses on the question of how people develop their capacities and their capabilities. That is, how overall human development occurs. Article 62 of the Constitution declares that participation by people in forming, carrying out, and controlling the management of public affairs is the necessary way of achieving the involvement to ensure their complete development, both individual and collective. The necessary way. And that same emphasis upon a democratic, participatory, and protagonistic society is also present in the economic sphere, which is why Article 70 stresses, quote, self-management, co-management, cooperatives in all forms, end of quote, and why Article 102's goal of developing creative potential of every human being emphasizes active, conscious, and joint participation. This key link, this focus on human development and practice and protagonism as the necessary way is familiar. It was Marx's key perspective. It's at the core of Marx's perspective. The young Marx, for example, envisioned what he called a rich human being, one who has developed his capacities and capabilities to the point where he is, quote, able to take gratification in a many-sided way, the rich man profoundly endowed with all the senses, end of quote. And he said, in place of the wealth and the poverty of political economy come the rich human being and the rich human need. But it wasn't only a young, romantic, so-called pre-Marxist Marx who spoke so eloquently about rich human beings.